me all the family pictures and everything. And her father was an Air Force officer who was in charge of Project Retrievables, so that any time UFO activity on the Earth anywhere happened, he was in charge to do the investigation. And she says, so we went from base to base, never lived in the same place very long. And she said, but every time they always had a telephone, but when that phone rang, it meant that the father had 10 minutes from the time that phone rang to be dressed with his briefcase and ready to go. And the military would drive up in front of the house, knock on the door, and she said never, no words were ever spoken, nothing. Just knock on the door, he goes out and gets in the car, they drive off, and when they drive off, military would be posted 4, one on each corner of the house until he comes back. And if it's a week, month, it doesn't matter. They are there to guard the house while he's gone, even on the base. She said, and so she never was ever allowed to stay home, even on the base. She was never allowed to stay home by herself. And so one night, the father would never allow it. One night, the father and mother were going next door, a couple doors down, to a party to visit some of her friends on base, and she asked her mother to let her stay home because they're not going to be that far. And the father said, absolutely not. Well, the mother finally talked the father into allowing it, so he allowed it. And so they went over to the neighbor's house, and she said for the first time in her life, she's finally in the house by herself. And she said she was sitting in the bedroom, combing her hair, had a bit mirror, and behind her was a walk-in closet. And she said while she was combing her hair, the door slid open, and a reptile stepped out, but he had to step down to get out from under the header. And stood there, and was standing almost touching the ceiling, like 7.5 foot, 8 foot ceiling. And she said he looked at her, and she's looking at him in the mirror, and she said, I've never been so frightened in my life because it's a reptile. And she's looking at him, and he's looking at her. And then she said he started moving, but not with his feet. He started floating toward her. And she said, I got the impression it's like coming up on a fly. And she said, I knew he's getting closer. And she said she jumped up, stumbled, ran down the hallway, ran into the bathroom, locked the door, opened up the window, and started screaming. Well, everybody in the neighborhood heard it. And she said, and then this thing, she said she could feel it coming down the hallway because it was very heavy. And it walked down the hallway behind her and started growling like an animal and clawing at the bathroom door. And she said then when her father and the other neighbors come running up, this thing heard them and walked back down. She said it just walked back down the hallway and went back into the bedroom. And she said when her father came in, she said they got her out and there was huge claw marks on the bathroom door. And the father said, this is why I didn't want her staying by herself. This is the reason. And then he told them, everybody, he told the family, he says, we've been warned by these reptile aliens that they're tired of us sticking our nose into their business. So they told me, just remember, you come out to put your nose in our business, we're going to send somebody into your home. And he said, that's why you've always had the military guarding the house, even on the base, because these things are interdimensional.
Yeah, exactly.
They can pop in at any time they want.
Not that guards on the corners are going to make any difference if the thing suddenly materializes in the walk-in closet, you know.
That's the way they think, though, isn't it? It's the way they think. I've got to have some guns. That'll sort them.
Not at all.
But I mean, it makes you wonder how often these things happen and we never get to hear it.
Oh, absolutely. Loads and loads of times. You know, I met a power dressing businesswoman in Vancouver who was still shaking when she told me the story, and it was years earlier it had happened. She met this guy. She said he had a dark side, but his other side was all right. She said, and she brought him back to the house, and they went into the bedroom to have sex, right? And the biggest secret, the first book I ever wrote, bringing this in, 1998 or so, 97 or something, was on a shelf above the bed, standing on its own. And he went apeshit, she said. you know, laid into her about reading stuff like that. And she said, so much so, I had to buy your book twice, she said, because I threw the bloody thing out after the experience that came. She said, and then I thought, no, I'll read this again. So they start having sex, she said, and he's on top of her and starts to get really, really rough, and she starts to get frightened. And she says, I've got my hand on the bottom of his back, right at the bottom of his back, she said, and suddenly my hand was pushed up by something. She said, I looked over his shoulder, and he'd sprouted a freaking tail. His tail had pushed her hand back. She screamed and threw him off the bed, and he stood there, she said, just for like a split second, two seconds maybe, in full reptilian form, and then just morphed back into human and left the house as fast as he could. I've heard these stories so often, you know. Some people think that I've sat in a dark room and thought, yeah, I know what's going on, it's all reptiles. It's people you meet, isn't it? They tell you their experiences, and then you put the strands together and you get the picture. It's hard research, it's not... It's obvious. Pulling it out the ether.
Well, that's what I said. There's too much proof out there. There's too many stories. Too many stories.
That's why it's so valuable you're coming out with the stories that you know, because otherwise everyone thinks that it's all on David, because it's so hard to talk about this stuff without attracting ridicule. And the more people who talk about this, the more acceptance there will be, because it'll be a phenomenon and not just somebody making up silly stories.
I have a doctor friend, and he has an apartment complex, and he said he put up one of the apartments for rent. And this young man wanted the apartment, so he said, so I was interviewing him. And he was sitting on the sofa, and he said, I had some paperwork, and I was just kind of interviewing him. And he says, and I looked over, and now there's two of them. He has another one just like him, two of them now. And they're talking to each other, and they're identical. And he said, I was shocked. There's two of them now, and they're both talking to each other. And then they both look at him, and he said, I said to this kid, what is this? What is this? And he said, oh, I'm sorry, this is my other self. And he said, what are you talking about, your other self? And he said, oh, I'm sorry. He said, well, go on. And so the other one just disappeared. And he says, I don't know what this is all about, but I don't want you in my apartment. So I'm thinking, you know, there's a lot of not only reptilians.
Hold on, I make that point. There's loads of different forms.
I would tell you about the time I was in Hawaii with my wife. And the two guys, somebody came into the restaurant, I don't know who it was, and I had to run. Did I tell you that?
Oh, you told me, yeah. You told us that story. And you had this voice in your head, basically, that just said, run, run, run. And that's
You're
what you
in trouble. Did. Your life is in danger. Run quick. Your life is in danger. Run quick. And it was involuntary. I didn't think to run. They motivated the brain to do it. I just got up and ran.
That's right.
And I didn't even think to do it.
Yeah.
And I ran all the way across the street, ran around the Hilton Hotel, the Hilton Village, and out to the ocean. And then the voice said, you're all right now. You're okay. And I sat there and I couldn't believe what I'd just done. And it's happened to me twice. It happened to me in Los Angeles. After that, another time.
And of course, because you avoided the danger, you never knew what the danger was. You didn't want to hang around to find out what it was that you were meant to be avoiding. Yeah. What a wild story. Yeah.
But it now look back on it now makes sense that if, as I have been told so many times, you have been brought here, then maybe there is an alien presence here that is my natural enemy. And I don't even know it.
Sure.
But somebody who's with me here knows it.
Yeah.
And when they get too close to me, too close in proximity to me, I'm not in any way, shape, or form prepared to confront that kind of dark power, so they just get me out quick.
It's the easiest solution. Yeah, right.
It's like having an FBI guy in the mob, and the mob finds out who he is. The FBI has to go in and get him out quick, because he's a dead man.
Yeah.
Every minute he stays in there, his life is in danger. So it's like they got to get you out quick. So I ran. I've got a great picture in color of Bush Sr. waving at someone, and they zoomed in on him waving, and he's got webbed.
Webbed hands.
Yeah.
I never heard that one before.
Yeah, I've got a picture. I'll show it to you.